So I would suggest that we start and maybe some more people find their way into our room. So welcome everyone to our very first international workshop on socially intelligent virtual agents, short SIVA. So today we want to pursue the question, how can we transform a functional virtual agent, so an agent that can carry out a task for a user, into a social virtual agent, so an agent with social capabilities, with the possibility to build a social relationship with the user over time. So maybe not only for one meeting or for 10 minutes, but even over a couple of months, a couple of years. And yeah, as you might guess, there are a lot of facets of this problem, and therefore I'm very happy to have you here so that we can get a lot of perspectives on this topic and discuss a lot about this topic. Yeah, so thank you for joining us, and hopefully also engage in this discussion with us and with our guests. So we created a nice program for you, and when I relate to we, I mean our organizing committee, which consists of Sebastian Rings, Frank Steinicke, Nale Lehmann-Willenbrock, and myself, Susanne Schmidt. We are all from the University of Hamburg and planned this workshop for you. For the workshop, we plan to have 3 parts. First, we want to kick off the workshop with a keynote by Daniel Roth. He wants to talk about why we need to look into social in order to provide intelligence. Afterwards, we will have a paper session. So we invited authors to submit their contribution, and we had an international program committee which reviewed all of the papers and then selected these 6 contributions to be presented today. And then finally, the third part will be a panel. So we invited 4 experts in the field of virtual agents. Jeremy Bellinson, Kyung-Soo Kim, Catherine Oertel, and Anthony Steed. So I'm very excited about that. So you can see we have a lot of expert knowledge in this Zoom room. So I really hope that you take this advantage, you take the opportunity to also ask any questions that you have, or of course also tell us your opinion on certain topics. So please feel free to do so and make this a very interactive and enjoyable experience for everyone. If you want to take part, you can either raise your hand at the end of each presentation. So there is a button in Zoom where you can raise your hand virtually. Then you can ask the question yourself, or you can also use our Discord channel and can post your question there, and then we will ask it for you to the presenters. So these are the 2 options, and please use both of them, yeah, for the reasons I mentioned. So I think this is all regarding the organization. So we can already start with our keynote. So I'm very happy that Daniel Roth accepted our invitation to be here today and to show his perspective on the topic virtual agents, especially social virtual agents. So I would already stop screen share so you can share your screen, and I will say a few words about your research in the meantime. So Daniel is assistant professor for human-centered computing and extended reality at the Friedrich Alexander University Erlangen-Nürnberg, which is in Germany. And he's also head of the HEX lab. And in this lab, he's dedicated to creating AI-driven interfaces for augmented reality, virtual reality, or in general, or extended realities, you could say. One aspect in his previous research I was really excited about is that he has a lot of knowledge regarding avatars and also hybrid avatar agent systems. And I think we will see several times in this workshop that there is a lot of overlap between those 2 topics. So I think this will already foster a nice discussion. What can we learn from one field for the other? And regarding the application fields Daniel is working in, he's specifically focusing on mental and also physical health. So I think one of the domains which has really the highest demands in social behavior. So yeah, I think the perfect keynote speaker for our workshop. Thanks again for being here today. And yeah, we see your slides already, so you can start right away.
Yeah, thank you, Susanne. It's super nice, and it's an honor for me to be here and talk to you. And also, of course, looking really forward to all the papers and the discussions. I already see that there's a lot of things that I'm interested in, and there's some overlaps. And I kind of try to put this into perspective, or the goal of this workshop into perspective of some of my previous research. And I'm titling this "Why We Need to Look into Social in Order to Provide the Intelligence." I will quickly just say a little bit about me, because then you may have the background of the disciplines I'm coming from. So I studied media and imaging technology. So I'm an engineer by studies, but in parallel, I also worked in the Department of Psychology at the Uni in Cologne, and also had some research visits to Michigan State University in Nanyang. And then I did my PhD, which was equally interdisciplinary, I guess, in the area of human-computer interaction in Würzburg, specifying in virtual and augmented reality, and further moved in at my postdoc to TU Munich, and did more physical health-related stuff. And now I started in April 2021 the professorship at FAU. And the professorship is basically denominated as human-centered computing in extended reality. And what we do is we research in the areas of virtual and augmented reality and human-computer interaction in relation to medicine. So we investigate mental problems and mental disorders, but also physical disorders and physical impairments, and try to bring both or all foundational knowledge, but also transnational knowledge and radical research into these areas to see how we can improve specific procedures or research foundational questions to help improving further procedures. And we can topic this imagineering novel languages for the communication between humans, and also between humans and machines, of course. And so per se, I'm interested in how people interact with computers and what the effects are on an interpersonal level. And I'm also, of course, interested in social interactions and how people interact with each other through computers or through computer-mediated communication. And especially I'm interested in, and this was part of my dissertation as well, one of the main parts, in how computers can actively moderate such interpersonal relationships and interpersonal interactions in virtual reality. So I want to start with a bit what motivated me from a cognitive or psychological perspective, and explain a bit of my view on how we interact in everyday world. And a basic and foundational thing that I came across through a lot of approaches and a lot of theories that are behind this is interpersonal adaptation or interpersonal synchrony, which also is a major topic in social interaction and psychological research and communication research. Of course, you find a lot of theories about it, but the basic idea is that interpersonal synchronization is a phenomenon of unintentional or intentional spatial or temporal couplings of two or more behavioral systems. And what I mean by that is basically metaphorically illustrated in this video. You would see these metronomes that all have different settings, but if you give them a common grounding and a common dynamics, you would see that over time these metronomes synchronize, and essentially, metaphorically, you could see interpersonal interaction as this kind of synchronization aspect. Yeah, we engage and we adapt to each other over time. So when we talk about these examples, this is another example which is maybe more picture. I hope you can see the markers or the point lights in the video. And these are pairs of dancers. Yeah, so pairs of dancers and they were all given the same music. They were not recorded all together, but individually as a pair, and all hear the same music, so you can see what happens. So I hope you see the music as well. And through time and this adaptation processes, you can see that some go slower, some go faster, some go with more expressive movement, but they all somehow synchronize over time in these pairs, and they adapt to each other and to each other's movements. While everybody, also there's kind of common agreement or unknown social code how we adapt to this. So when one is more expressive and the other one is more submissive, maybe there's a common agreement in how to dance. And this is basically, I think, my view on how we interact. And you can also see this in real life behaviors. So there's a really strong impression of nonverbal communication. It makes up to a large degree the social information we are processing. And one of Václavic's axioms is also that we cannot not communicate. So whatever our appearance represents is part of communication, and we can of course measure some aspects in this. You see the examples on the left, which are very illustrational. But when we look deeper and use tracking technologies or motion capturing technologies, we can also analyze this. So we can see what kind of mimicry aspects, for example, are present over time. So we can use this as a parameter to assess the capability or the adaptation over time, and also potentially how good or bad people get along with each other. So this could be one of the things that we can look into when thinking about intelligence in the social. And why is this important? And I looked into the program of the website, and there was of course some examples about digital people and Magic Leaps Mika and so on, and I could not help myself to check them out. And when you check these out, you will find that they have all certain aspects of realism, and they have all certain aspects and selling points, of course, but there's really basic, simple interaction mechanisms that are missing. For example, in Soul Machines Digital People, they use the webcam and in interaction, but this agent will not actually look at you if you change your position. So you could easily implement that. I mean, face tracking is not such a difficult technology, but you would always have to assume that the person is right in front of the screen. And the same is with this Magic Leaps Mika demo, for example. You can see they are not using any kind of relation in space, but rather this agent as part of the eye contact looks way above the other user. And I think Unreal Engine MetaHuman has kind of similar behavioral functionalities, but not really intelligence behind it. But nevertheless, my point is, what we are at now is this. So we are here. This is the reality at the moment. This is what everybody knows as an intelligent agent. And this is a video from my grandma, actually, because she was pushing me to install TV in the cellar, because she likes to be there and make a fire. And I hope the English speakers will also understand it.
Loslassen wieder, ja?
Gut, okay. Alexa startet Waipu. Jetzt loslassen.
Ja.
Okay. Ja.
Okay, so she asked for opening the TV app.
Und jetzt, wenn ich weiter will, das nächste Programm, dann gehe ich einfach weiter.
Yeah.
And it's of course very easy. She's 90 years old. And I asked her to ask for the weather, to make her understand that it's not a very stupid system.
Frag doch mal nach dem Wetter.
Wie ist das Wetter?
In München beträgt die Temperatur momentan.
Okay, and Alexa gives the system, and she is amazed, and some Polish cursing, I guess. But my point is that it's very incomplex, and it does not involve strong nonverbal responses, of course. And there is some basic profiling and some gimmicks and jokes and that, but per se, it's not entirely social. The most social thing is, of course, the verbal interaction, and that you have lights in the LED And that's basically it. So the response and the coupling between this agent and you as a person is not really impressive. And one of the approaches that we came up, not to say that we want to construct a fully intelligent social agent, which I think is very difficult in a PhD thesis and also as a singular researcher. But one of the approaches we came up with is to use hybrids as a proxy, basically to study and understand intelligent social interaction. Yeah? And what I mean by hybrids is that we essentially use the machine to interfere in the interpersonal communication between people. So really actively mediate this kind of social signals that we process and that we express in regular communication. And it builds upon a couple of theories, of course, and a couple of really great concepts. One of them from Jeremy Bailson, who is here on the panel today. So it will also be very interesting to discuss with him of transformed social interaction. And the basic principle of this is to decouple what we can see in the virtual world from physical appearance and behavior. Yeah? So when we construct virtual simulations, we are completely free to use whatever input we have and have it altered in a way that, for example, one person can have their focus on multiple persons in the audience, which would be great, right? So I would love to pay attention to all of you. At the same time, I would also love to have all your attention, of course. But the idea is basically to decouple the virtual and the physical. And you can see already kinds of examples of this in very principal things such as games. We use emoticons, we use emojis and so on. They make some movements, but you enter a key or you use a mouse click. Jeremy and others did also quite interesting study with enhanced smile in social interactions. We did initial works with mimicry as well. And overall, we conceptualized this, what you can see on the left, with this synchronization engine. Yeah, so you have a kind of a social intelligence engine that synchronizes between people and that may or may not contribute to the communication in a positive, hopefully not negative way, but alter basically the input signals that come from humans as the baseline to map it in different fashion or in alternative fashion to their avatars. Yeah, and we, similarly to Jeremy and others, of course, consider avatars to be driven by human behavior and agents to be driven by algorithms. And these technologies were conceptualized to merge both and have the human as a baseline. And of course, so this is one of the examples. You can use many input types, facial expressions, or EEG and motion tracking and gaze tracking maybe. And this could be one of the examples. For example, when you have people with that have social disorders or social communication problems, but you want to, for example, guarantee a fair job interview. Yeah, so you would need some kind of engine that mediates and considers these kind of distractions or this kind of disorders and provide everybody with the same fair decision. Yeah, and there's other examples. This is just one thing we thought about, but there's many other examples where you could use this for. So the engine understands what is the basic parameters of the social interaction and when attention should be paid, for example, by tracking the voice and saying, okay, it's regular that when I speak that my counterpart would pay attention to me. So the gaze is directed at myself. Yeah, and when the engine finds out that it's not the typical way at the moment, we interfere and interact and basically augment this kind of behavior to give a regular impression. Yeah, and this is more or less the end state of what we came up with, and it shows some of the examples that we could come up with. You see that it's a relatively sophisticated tracking of body motion, and gaze is tracked, and the lower mouth part is tracked and replicated to these avatars in virtual reality, which you can see here. So we have eye trackers in the glasses, and we have mouth behavior tracked and facial behavior tracked. and the participants see each other, of course, in this virtual world from a first-person view, and see themselves and interact. And if we go further in the video, we can see that we have some artificial elements in this. Yeah. So, for example, the blinking is not entirely sophisticated within this gaze tracking data. So we introduce some synthesized blinks, for example. Yeah. So basically an augmentation of naturalness of the interaction. And we could also push this further and say, okay, yeah, we want to have this option to pay attention when it's a regular behavior, when it's considered a regular behavior. So we declare, okay, when somebody speaks regularly, I would like to have the other person point the attention towards me. So while the user is looking away, which you can see on this upper right part, the engine would still consider this as an error in communication, if you want to say so, and augment this communication. Yeah. So while in the original behavior, the person would look away, the sync engine would potentially augment this toward a directed gaze. Yeah? And on the same side, we can do this with mimicry scenario, which basically is in everyday communication a sign of positivity. Yeah? It shows liking, and if persons mimic you, they probably are more positive towards you, and the same kind when you are positive to a person, you adapt their behaviors and so on, similarly to what we could see with Angela Merkel and Barack Obama, of course. And there's different ways of blending these behaviors then into I stop this here, into the simulation. So this is what the user would do in the original fashion, and this is some sort of naive blending, and this is some more complex blending of the behavior into this simulation or interaction flow. So initial experiments basically and technology examples how we could use such interactions that go beyond emojis and emotions. And essentially what we need is this kind of relatively complex system in the background. Of course, we can say in the end machine learning will solve all this, but it's not really the case, because we need to know how to train it. Yeah, and this is our approach to do this. We have different layers and technological layers in this basically, and we sense the patterns of this interaction. We compare these patterns to what patterns would be usual, and then we may or may not introduce artificial behaviors and blend these behaviors into the rendering. And of course, all of this needs to happen in real time. Yeah? So basically, proof of principles and prototypes on how this could work out. And one of the sources, of course, is also what could we do beyond this pure and mere replication of human behavior. And this is one of the ideas we had for a situation where we could play around with this large tracking space in a simulated 5G localization environment, right? So this was at the time really interesting for us. Nobody had anything to see how we can do VR in really big scenarios, and also in the future when 5G is everywhere and present, and we can stream with zero latency and a lot of bandwidth. And the idea was to replicate this Senckenberg Museum in Frankfurt and have a multi-user experience with 5 people. Yeah, and the question was, okay, now we have only localization in this, and so the only data we basically had was the orientation of the headsets and the localization on the horizontal plane in this large field. And we thought, okay, how can we make this more social? How can we think about what kind of social cues and social information can we provide for an exchange? And we came across a couple of theories, of course, and one of them is by Kiesler and others, who basically say, okay, if we have computer-mediated communication that has no cues, or such as email exchange or text exchange. This has really negative impact to the lack of nonverbal communication. And then there was also other theories in communication that basically inspired us to explore a bit. And for example, Joe Wather provides this social information processing theory and basically says humans can compensate with these lacks of social cues and lacks of exchange channels by just using other cues such as emojis, or in the sense of text exchange, the fluency of speech or the speed of speech, and so on and so on. So really about creating new languages, how in this case humans can interact with each other. And so what we basically did was we thought about, okay, what kind of input data can we use to estimate behavioral phenomena of everyday life, such as we group together or we focus on an object and so on, and what kind of visual feedback can we give the users, represented here in this very simplistic avatars and these box-like or pillar-like avatars. And we choose 3 phenomena: eye contact, which everybody knows to initiate communication; joint attention to an object, which develops in a very early infant stage; or social grouping, for example. And what we did was to find these proxies. So we visualized eye contact with these floating bubbles and joint attention with the attention toward an object, which was then highlighted by this particle system, and grouping where people had the same color when being together. And this is how it looked like from a first-person view. So if you as a user would walk toward a group, basically, you would see yourself first as a gray pillar, and when you join this kind of group, which we do in everyday life frequently, you would change your color, and the whole group would change the color to a common color. Yeah? So you kind of feel associated with this group, and if you would interact or direct your angular vector at some person, and they do too, then you have these floating bubbles. And if you would jointly observe an object, you would have these particle system highlights. And we compared this. One of the groups had these augmentations, and one of the groups simply was a gray group, so to say. And we could indeed find that there's an increase in perceived social presence and also in the perceived thought provocation in this scenario. So they had to explore the museum for 15 minutes in these groups of 5 people and learn. There was some tasks they learned about the exhibits, but essentially it was interact naturally and learn about exhibits. That was more or less the task. And we could also find that their actual behaviors changed. So we found that there was an increase in eye contact. There was an increase in looking at objects and also in looking at avatars, or looking at other people. So initial evidence, hopefully, that these kind of augmentations could have positive impacts, and the people were not told what they were about. So we also didn't tell them these are augmentations, this is what you have to do. So basically waited for them to find it out. So we could use this theories and basic understanding of that users can decode and encode information, as well as the idea of decoupling the representation and behavior to create new social affordances with such hybrid technologies. Yeah? And also find out on the other way what is important in communication and how can we maybe go alternative routes. So and really for me is also a platform in researching, essentially also researching for agent technologies. And this is also maybe the point of this keynote and my point of argumentation, what we need to understand. So looking at such patterns of communication. So here, for example, there's a motion capture of male and female dyads. So female dyads on the left side and male dyad on the right side. And they had to rate their rapport, so the interpersonal understanding and positivity, if you want to say so. And the females had a very high rapport, and the males had a very low rapport, and this was exemplary dyads. And the analysis, basically an analysis of different parameters here the deviations of the head, horizontal or rotational orientation, the openness of the person, so how far the limbs are from the body center, for example, and the complexity, so the movement, the overall movement. And we can use this kind of window cross leg correlation to analyze this motion capture data and see this kind of patterns. Yeah, we see how does this nonverbal behavior and the rapport between people express, how is this expressed in different parameters. Yeah, and this is as deep as we have to go, I think, and maybe even go deeper and understand the neural underpinnings of this interpretation of nonverbal and social behavior. So this is, for example, one simple example is an MRI study where we did motion capture recordings of everyday activities such as sweeping or mopping and so on. So we had asked participants to do this activity in a specific mood, so either a happy mood or an angry mood, and we had this kind of videos taken, and then we did an fMRI study. And in this fMRI study, we showed, usually you do this in batches, and we showed the videos to the people and simply ask, what kind of activity did they do, or how did they do this activity? And so simple questions and assessment of such small videos of people doing activities. And just by asking a different question, yeah, you will find very different activity in the brain. Yeah, so just by asking and pointing the assessment to something, you will find different activity in the brain, and you find also different social activity in the brain. So social parts of the brain, such as the mentalizing system, which is associated with perspective taking and empathy and so on and so on. So this is in my understanding how deep we need to go. And for example, so Frank told me a bit about a project starting with the medical context. So this is one of the current works where we also worked in the COVID context, providing a replication or a real-time replication of a ICU unit. And the idea was to basically allow an expert from outside to join this unit. So the transport of personnel in the hospital would be reduced, and multiple experts can have the possibility to see multiple patients, but don't have to move in their position. Yeah, so essentially, this person from outside joins the local situation, has access to the data, sees the local expert as well, can give some pinpointing, as well through virtual reality, and the local person sees the other person through augmented reality. But what we can think about it, if we go further, is okay, now this local person is there, and maybe the expert is not available anymore. And a really interesting thought on this, and I guess this is also what Frank's works and Susanne, your works go towards, is having a continuous presence with an agent. Yeah. So when I log off, my agent jumps in. Yeah. And one interesting thing or paper or aspect, and this is from Gerhard 2001, and they already thought about this continuous presence of people. So basically adapting a personalization, adapting and learning how you would interact and mapping this behavior to an agent. So when you log off, the agent would be present. So I recommend this as a reading. It's really interesting thoughts. Of course, graphically, it was another age, but the concept matters. Yeah. Okay, so for me, this is the insight into my assumptions of this and my humble opinions of why we need to look into social in order to provide intelligence. And of course, everybody is now looking into GANs, and they have made tremendous progress, for example, in stylization and adapting behaviors of different people and so on. But GANs alone will not solve it. So generative adversarial network will not solve it alone, because we don't really know what and how to train them yet. Yeah, and we need an understanding, in my opinion, for human communication and feed back this information that we gather into agents and agent designs. And many of the previous agents are sophisticated and convincing, but they are still very, very rule-based, and every rule needs to be implemented, and there's no flexibility in these rules. And this is what I mean. Everybody is individual, and there needs to be an adaptation case for specific interactions, and therefore we need to consider the second person in this equation, yeah, or the groups in this equation. And I believe that we need to understand the neural underpinnings as well and feed back this information into HCI design. We kind of need to know what is the neural response and what activity would be triggered in order to understand how we can design agents and how we can design interactive systems. And then I have a point for that I would say that renderings and appearance will not be the main problem. And this is what we see from our interaction studies. There's quite a sophisticated way to produce nonverbal communication with different methods, not only limited to a very realistic appearance. And these are my humble opinions. In the thesis and in other works, we came up with multiple models and multiple effects and kind of try to map this. I think it's too much to go into detail here, but the important message for me is that the interaction with a computer and also the interaction between two humans and mediated by a computer really depend upon each other. And my interest in this is to use the computer as social mediator in order to understand how we interact and how we can potentially use this knowledge to create artificial intelligence systems. And with that, I thank you very much. So this is my current team, and I thank all the collaborators that work with us and hope that funders fund our research. And we also have 2 position openings that I would quickly advertise. So 2 fully funded postdoc or PhD students can join our group, and the working area is AR, VR, and computer vision. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well for this very interesting perspective on social virtual agents. So we have a little bit of time for discussion. So for everyone who joined our meeting a little later, you're very much invited to raise your hand and ask a question directly, or you can also use our Discord channel and write your questions there. And then we would ask them for you. So please use one of these options to ask Daniel whatever question comes into your mind. Otherwise, maybe I would start with one question that I have. So you already mentioned that we are usually trying to replicate human behavior when we talk about social human agents and you virtual agents, I mean, of course, and you already showed us one way to go beyond this replication. So one thing that I was wondering is in real human social behavior, of course, we also see some flaws maybe, or maybe some imperfections now. So for example, real humans are not always super honest. Maybe they have some social biases, maybe they change their mood in some situations. So is this something that we also want to simulate in agents, or?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
I would absolutely say this is making individuality. And if you have a common aspect, and I think that would partially be the gun or not be the gun in this kind of case. But if you have a common model that applies to every situation, your agent will fail. And also if your agent does not have these sorts of imperfections. Yeah. So I think there's a couple of papers on this as well, and that there may be some assistance even in the medical perspective and early research. I can find out the papers if you're interested. But there was actually quite some cases where this was the key to make it more convincible. You have these imperfections in actions. And that is, I think, also, I don't use Alexa frequently, and now I know my grandma does, but I think this is partially the thing. Yeah, if 10 people ask the same question, they will get the same answer. And this is why I would consider this still a very functional interface, in my opinion. Yeah? But yeah, imperfections, I think they matter a lot.
So maybe then a follow-up question, because you say everyone who asks gets the same answer. So probably it would be nice to have some customization so that maybe the agent is also adapting to the personality and the requirements of the user. But how far do we want to go there? So should it be like for avatars where we can really design every single detail, and then every user would see his version or her version of a virtual agent, but nobody really shares the agents? Or what do you think? How could we approach this?
As natural as possible would be my answer, but I think this it would be a start to somehow adapt. Yeah, and we know this from many other fields. Like, we know that when people work together and people live together, they adapt. For one thing, in a social context, but also even their faces get more equal. Yeah, there's literature that your face adapts and really your appearance adapts to others. And I don't have a technological solution for this. Yeah, I think ambient sensing and ubiquitous sensing and gathering data that is beyond verbal would help that. But I also don't see many interfaces making use of this.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so anyone from the audience who wants to ask Tanya something? So Celeste, please go ahead.
Yeah, got it. So it's really, really interesting to see the hybrid agent avatars and the way that they can kind of mask behaviors that might be considered something that people don't want to present. But are there any kind of drawbacks that might be possible in that sort of situation? That's one thing that might worry me. So I wondered if it's possible, and it probably would be in such a situation, for the user to be able to kind of override any of the agent's influence. I guess that was my question there.
Yeah, so it's of course an ethical issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I know what you're pointing at, and this is not out of our thoughts. And there's actually a longer paper draft that I have in my Dropbox on ethical aspects of this, and some things. Of course, there's drawbacks, and these drawbacks are always when you remove autonomy from a user.
Yeah.
And there is no argument against this. This is also an artificial system, and these are artificial systems that somehow reduce your autonomy. And if you go to really like a hybrid avatar agent co-presence, what Gerhard and others suggested, then you would also give another AI system the chance to represent yourself. Yeah, and we looked at this from a couple of aspects. Like, you could try to increase transparency by seeing, okay, what kind of stuff is manipulated, and you could also see that you give as many options to reduce or stop or allow for any stopping interference and so on, which would also be true for the other person, right? Because I would like to know when my communication partner has the agent on, so to say, and it's not really there. So it's Pandora's box you're opening, and I guess for me the aspect of this is a bit more to find out than to apply. Yeah, so I think it's good that we are as individual as we are, and that there's people that are very good in nonverbal communication, and others maybe like myself that may not be so good. But for me, this is a research platform, and to gain more knowledge on what we need to do, rather than saying we can straight away apply this. There's a long road for this. Yeah? But for example, such a fair interview situation would be something where I really think this could be beneficial. Yeah.
Sense, yeah.
Because we are like we are, and we have these stereotype biases, whether we like it or not. Yeah, it's not something you can fight against. It's deeply rooted sometimes, and not even because you want it to be like that, because society provides you with these stereotypes. And yeah, so this is one of the options.
Thanks. That was a great talk. Very interesting.
Okay, we have another question in our Discord channel by Victoria Interante. So when an AI has the ability to modify the appearance or behavior of users' avatars in real time, how do you think that will affect people's sense of the veracity, I hope I pronounce it correctly, of their engagement with others in VR? On the one hand, we might be hardwired to respond based on what we see, even if we know that what we might be seeing is fake. But I worry a lot about the potential erosion in trust.
Yeah, me too. I cannot conquer this, because it's also not something I want to conquer. Like, I don't argue that the argument is not that I think this is the perfect solution for the future. And I also don't think the interaction with agents all the time is the perfect solution for the future. I think trust is a big issue already, even with things that are not transparent in what they collect. Yeah, so I think the major problem or the major holdback for many people not using Alexa and Siri is they don't know what kind of data is collected. And I think it would be even more beneficial for the industry to just simply tell them this is the data we collect. Yeah, and maybe they would say, okay, fair enough, I get this free service and you collect this data, and that's the way of me being the product. But of course, not knowing what happens is the major issue. Yeah. And I have no solution. I just have some use cases where I think it could be beneficial.
Okay, then I think we have still time for one short question. So anyone wants to know something? Please go ahead.
Daniel, it was a really interesting thing. Sorry, I missed the earlier part, but going back to your point about the specific use cases that will be beneficial, again, sorry if you already said this, do you think that it may be like a thing that people decide not to use after a certain time? So if, for instance, I'm not socially comfortable, I might use my hybrid avatar agent for a while to form social interactions with people, but as I get more comfortable, I may decide to be myself in some sense and take all the control back. Or do you think in long term it might change?
No, absolutely. I believe that absolutely, that this could be something that would be interesting, and also for training purposes, yeah, for therapeutical training. So I strongly believe that the many mental disorders based on defect or are in the roots communication disorders. Yeah, many are. And if you could provide a way to give more comfort to the people, but on the same thing, tell them, okay, usually this would be expected. You are of course free to do whatever you do, but this is what a majority of the people would do. You may have a chance also to improve social anxiety and this kind of social communication disorders. But I myself, I'm not a therapist, so I cannot really judge into depth whether this would be routes I would go as a therapist. But we should explore many more routes or many more pathways in interacting with social agents, but also interacting with such kind of hybrid systems, in my opinion, to see what could be beneficial, because it's a big problem, and a lot of mental disorders are really, in principle, communication disorders.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then thank you again, Daniel, for this super interesting talk. I think it was very insightful, and we could probably discuss it further. Maybe we will actually. So if you have still questions, you can still use the channel and ask them. But for now, we would do a short break of 4 minutes, and then we see each other again for our paper presentations. So grab a coffee and then...
Thank you, Susanne.
And in the meantime, if there are presenters here, you can, of course, already test your presentation or the video if you like. You don't have to, it's an offer, of course.
Susanne, can I share my screen already?
Okay, good point. So 1 second. Now you should be able to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope that every one of you had a chance to have a short break. I know it's very short today, but we have a lot to do, or a lot of plans today. So now we will start with 6 presentations from various fields within this whole topic of socially intelligent virtual agents. And we will start with the presentation of Fariba Mostajaran, who will tell us a little bit more about a very basic question. How should we embody a virtual agent, basically? So please, Fariba, go ahead.
Thanks, Susanne. And hello, everyone. My name is Fariba, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Hamburg. Today, I will present our preliminary work on anthropomorphism of virtual agents and its effects on cognitive performance in augmented reality. When we talk about virtual agents, we may mean a wide range of computer programs which could come in different designs and various visual representations, ranging from no visual representation, including voice-only assistants, to cartoony representations and to fully realistic humanoid agents. Some studies have suggested that different representations may actually have an effect on perceived psychological effects of the agents. For example, Nowak and Bioka varied the level of anthropomorphism of virtual agents and showed that humans show different social responses to each variation. Also, Yoon and colleagues proposed that a realistic whole body agent is preferred over an upper body or cartoonist style agent for remote collaborations. And Kim and colleagues showed that when a virtual agent has a human body representation and shows social behaviors, users feel more confident in the agent's ability to perform tasks compared to a voice-only agent. However, the question of whether different levels of anthropomorphism plays a role in cognitive performance in the presence of virtual agents is still open. So in this work, we aimed at exploring possible answers to this question, and to do so, we implemented 5 different representations of a virtual agent, which were all placed above a virtual model of an Amazon Echo. We did our experiment in augmented reality setup and used Unreal head-mounted display to display the AR content. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic restrictions at the time of performing this study, we could perform our study only with 2 participants who were from the same household as the experimenter. They were both females with the age of 18 and 48. So in the experiment, participants performed 8 anagrams in the presence of each of these representations in augmented reality. And to evaluate the cognitive task performance, we recorded the voice of the participants and analyzed them manually. This design was inspired by the work of Miller and colleagues, as it is shown in this figure. In our study also, after each condition, the social presence questionnaire by Bailanson and colleagues was administered. Which you can see also in this, you can see the items here. So here we can see how the whole body representation looks like, and the questionnaire after performing the anagrams. As you can see, the entire experiment was in German language, including this questionnaire. The next representation is the whole body, the upper body representation only. We had also a condition with the head only, lips only, and voice only. So the voice only was basically a model of the virtual echo. Our preliminary results of our experiment shows that the whole body condition has the highest correct answers, also in the anagrams. Also, except for the voice condition, the percentage of correct responses decreases as the degree of anthropomorphism decreases. The voice and lips conditions showed the best cognitive performance right after the whole body representation. Also, we observed faster response times for the whole body and the upper body conditions. Moreover, the participants gave the correct answers faster in the voice condition compared to the head and lips conditions. The results of the social presence questionnaire showed that participants perceived only the whole body condition as socially present in the physical room, because only this condition showed positive social presence score. In addition, the significant result of a Pearson correlation suggested a negative correlation between the social presence score and the required time for giving a correct answer in the cognitive task. That is, the higher the perceived social presence, which may arise from the degree of anthropomorphism, the shorter the response time required for a correct response. So to conclude, we showed that the degree of anthropomorphic representation of a virtual agent may have an impact on the cognitive task performance in augmented reality environments. We also observed that the higher the level of anthropomorphism, the better the cognitive performance. And perceived social presence was higher for more anthropomorphic agents, which may have played the role of a mediator here for better cognitive performance. The voice on the agent didn't follow this pattern and showed the best cognitive performance right after the whole body and upper body representation. A reason could be that low perceived social presence of the lowest anthropomorphic representations, and by that I mean lips only and head only conditions, could be explained by the uncanny valley concept, which suggests the evocation of unpleasant emotional responses due to an inhuman agent. However, the voice condition may not be affected by this concept because it may resemble a familiar scenario of interaction with today's voice agents. And of course, I have to say that the biggest limitation of our study was its small sample size, and future studies with larger number of participants may carry out a valid inferential evaluation of the results for hypothesis testing. And that was my 7-minute talk. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Fariba. Yeah, thank you for showing us this super nice concept and also nice implementation of a concept. I'm really looking forward to your full user study to see if your hypothesis can be confirmed in such a study. So are there any questions from the audience? So otherwise, maybe I would ask one. So from what I at least saw in your presentation, it was a miniature version of a virtual agent, right? Displayed above this Amazon Echo. And also, I think the agent was not showing any behavior, so it was just standing there, correct?
It had idle animations, and actually it gave the instructions right before the each task. So we saw that there are lip syncing for the representations that had face and lips, and otherwise it had idle animations.
Mm-hmm. And do you think it would make a difference if, first of all, the agent would be life-sized, and second, if it would have, I don't know, more interaction with the user during the task, or I don't know, maybe you have a more experience also from classical social experiments. So what do you think?
Yes, I think the size actually matters. So our restriction was basically these head-mounted displays that we use. It is very nice because the AR head-mounted display, because it is like more like a everyday glasses, and you can see augmented reality objects with that. That was also an experiment for us. But of course, we were limited to the field of view of this. And then, so we tried to fit everything in the limited field of view to not have like, to just see half of the body, or, so we wanted to control what basically participants see. But of course, if we have a better head-mounted display with a larger field of view, we would definitely place realistic, human size agent above the echo.
I mean, I would argue that even without this technical limitation, it's interesting if we really want to have life-sized agents all over our apartment. So maybe this is also something we can discuss in more detail in the panel. So how should we actually represent our virtual agents, our virtual assistants? So
I mean, I don't know if the time is up, but I would say if we are showing a humanoid, that is my approach. If we are showing a humanoid agent, then it should be human size, unless it is like a fairy tale miniature size or other fantasy agents. But I mean, this is like bringing also this uncanny valley. Is it like real or what is it? This? That would be my answer.
Yeah, good point. I agree. Okay, thank you again, Fariba. And we will continue with our second presentation. So unfortunately, we cannot be in New Zealand today. So this will be our contribution from New Zealand. Deshani Kumarapeli will present the work. He's from the HIT Lab in New Zealand. Could you please already share your screen? Ah, yeah. Okay, thanks. Then you can start right away with your presentation.
Please unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Hello and good morning from New Zealand. I'm Dilshani Kumarapeli. I'm a PhD student at HIT Lab New Zealand. So today I'm going to discuss about how people can understand non-verbal behavior cues responsible for facial emotional expressions of agents and avatars, and also I'm going to talk a little bit about the hidden threats of this behavioral privacy that could cause by exposing into these behavior tracked avatar systems. So let's move on to the presentation. First, I'll briefly talk about the origin of this emotional intelligence word. In early 1980s, psychologist Howard Gardner came up with this new view of intelligence by dividing intelligence into 8 different categories call it multiple intelligence. There he mentioned this interpersonal intelligence and intrapersonal intelligence, which is all about how we are going to identify and deal with our own emotions and desires and the people around us. So even though this theory is a little bit controversial, as a successor of this in 1990, Peter Savoy and John D. Mayer came up with this emotional intelligence framework. And this is their definition of emotional intelligence. So in this framework, they are dividing this emotional intelligence into 3 basic categories. And you can see that a considerable amount of this emotional intelligence is all about how we are dealing with and how we are identifying others' emotions. So why identifying others' emotions is this much important? Because emotional intelligence plays a vital role in day-to-day collaborations and also especially in negotiation. We usually negotiate to increase or maximize our gains or at least minimize our losses. So in that case, it is really nice to have a clear picture about our opponent, and it will be really beneficial to know what could be the next step of our opponent so we could act accordingly. So that is what about emotional intelligence and why it is important. So what is the connection between this emotional intelligence and the avatar agent systems? Nowadays, we can see this really beautiful trend of converting most of the day-to-day collaborations into these immersive applications. So it is proven that in order to have a successful collaboration, we need to have a desired level of emotional intelligence, because otherwise that it is proven that negotiators or collaborators with a higher emotional intelligence perform well in collaboration. So that my question that I feel like that in these collaborative systems, some pieces are missing, that still there are some steps that we need to fill out. So I have some questions. That my first question was, with the current technical capabilities of giving these subtle emotional cues or that subtle nonverbal behavior cues, are we yet able to provide that the desired or the appropriate emotional intelligence for the users in order to success in this collaboration? And if we are not, so what can we do? How can we synthetically or artificially utilize users with this emotional intelligence? And is it really safe to give this kind of emotional intelligence and let others track our expressions? So in order to find that, we have created this research question and planned this study to test that research question. So in this study, we have replicated the emotional expressions of actual human actors into photorealistic and cartoonized graphical representation without audio tracks, so that people will only focus on the behavior cues. So, and we asked participants to watch these 3-second video clips and try to identify the emotion expressed from that video clip at the end. So we have first we have selected 2 actors from Russian audiovisual data set and got 8 emotional video from each actor. So then we have replicated it into photorealistic graphical representation using MetaHuman with FaceVR Studio and cartoonized representation using Snapchat filters. This is an example video of our of the emotion angry. So we have conducted this study with 40 participants without any diagnosed medical health conditions that prevent them from concentrating into this emotional or the non-behavioral cues. So we tested these 2 hypotheses, and from the results of the first hypothesis, we have found that cartoonized agents have the same level of emotional clarity or emotion identification capability as real humans. But when it comes to photorealistic avatar agent representations, that the emotion identification capability is really low. So when we are using a photorealistic representation in our system or collaborative system, it is obvious that we have to utilize users with another way to have this emotional intelligence. So we have created this, we have retrained this CNN model with photorealistic graphical representations. That initially this model was proposed to image classification, but we have retrained it to identify emotions under 8 categories. Detailed description of this model is in the paper. So this is the model training graph, and this is a comparison of human emotion accuracy of photorealistic avatars versus our CNN accuracy. You can see that CNN has a 0.95 overall accuracy, whereas human accuracy for photorealistic representation is only 0.57. And also CNN is working really well for all the emotions, unlike that human accuracy that is changing drastically for emotions. But having a better emotion identification capability or emotional intelligence for all these emotional types is really important to have a nice collaboration, because that our empathy is happening with the basis of these emotions. So this is the confusion matrix of people versus human CNN model. So now I'm going to talk about a little bit about that it is obvious that these machine learning algorithms or deep learning algorithms could identify that hidden behavioral trends better than humans. That this model is a real model with thousands of parameters, but now we have models with hundreds of millions of parameters. So the capability of these models are really high. So I have created this word cloud using the abstract of these papers, which is talking about the hidden threats of privacy. So that these these applications or these behavior track systems are capable of identifying our behavioral cues or that our hidden behavior trends, including our identity, with a very high accuracy, which could harm our unobservability and undetectability, anonymity and pseudonymity features of anyone's privacy. So I think it is important to that in an immersive environment that getting exposed into these kind of system that behavioral tracking is inevitable, because we have to let them track. But before let them track, I think it is better to get precautions of hiding some features or using some utility softwares to hide these features in order to have a proper level of privacy. So one of the limitations of this study is we haven't tested these materials in an immersive environment. So in an immersive environment, users' accuracy could change a little bit, even though that CNN accuracy is going to be same. And also we have tested this machine learning algorithm only on one kind of graphical representations. It is nice to have a wide database with different kind of representations. And we also use only one method to replicate these representations. So our take-home message is, if we are using a cartoonized avatar, it is okay that you can provide the desired level of emotional intelligence to the users. But if you are using photorealistic representations, it is always better to utilize users with another additional layer of emotional intelligence in order to maintain that proper collaboration. And also, it is better to be cautious about what we are revealing or what we are letting those applications track before getting exposed into those applications. This is reference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think especially your take-home messages were super interesting, not only for avatars, but for agents as well. So thank you for that. Unfortunately, we are a little bit running out of time. So if you have any questions to Shani, please just post it to the Discord channel, and then I'm sure she will happily answer them. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Then, we will start the next presentation, which is from Nidhi Yoshi. So we have the same topic, or the same, not completely the same topic, of course, the same research field, so emotions, but from a completely different perspective. So not the sensing of emotions of virtual agents, but of real humans, maybe from the perspective of a virtual agent. So Nidhi, you can start.
Can you hear me, and can you also see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So hi everyone, my name is Nidhi Joshi, and I'm a PhD student at University of Hamburg. And today I'll be talking about a paper which is related to advanced emotion analytics of virtual group meetings. And I'll start with presenting the initial prototype and then show you how we can add in intelligent virtual agents in this prototype. So I want to show you a video first, and I think you'll be able to hear the sound also.
Working with them. And I was never going to tell this story, and then I'll leave it alone.
So as you can see in the video, we are trying to present the aggregated emotions of the group as a whole in our analytics. And the emotions that we are currently targeting is happiness, anger, sadness, disgust, fear, surprise, boredom, engagement, confusion, and frustration. So I guess I can move on to the next slide already. So this is only another way of presenting similar information. But here we only present the video summary. So basically once the meeting is done, we give the host this analytics about how the overall emotion of the participants during the meeting was. So this is what we mean by emotion analytics of the whole group. Sorry. So so in the first use cases, I would like to talk about intelligent virtual agent in the role of a meeting facilitator. So let's imagine this virtual agent here is a meeting facilitator. So first, let's understand what a meeting facilitator does. So the main task of meeting facilitator is to moderate the conversations during the meeting, so that the entire tone of the meeting is maintained and the agenda is kept on track and not a lot of deviations occur, deviations and distractions. So we would like to think of if a virtual meeting facilitator can be trained using AI. So what will it be trained on? We collect some visual, paraverbal, and verbal cues based on expert meeting facilitators' inputs, and we try to train this meeting facilitator based on these cues so that it can react to specific instances during the meeting in a specific manner, so that the agenda is kept on track and the overall moderation happens in a more effective and efficient manner. So, sorry. So, you can imagine this to be like, suppose in the beginning of the meeting, you already have the intuition that the engagement of the group will be fairly low, because all of us come from different moods and different emotional states when we are at the beginning of the meeting. So maybe the intelligent meeting facilitator can take the role of reading the agenda of the meeting here in a way that it is trained by the expert meeting facilitators, visual, paraverbal, and verbal cues. So in short, I mean to say that the meeting facilitator can maybe start by smiling, greeting everyone in the meeting, and then use some specific words which are known to create positive impact during the meeting, and sort of bring together everyone in the meeting on the agenda. And also specific paraverbal cues, intonations can be learned from the actual meeting facilitators by this virtual agent. And also during the middle of the meeting, there might be instances when the frustration level of the group increases beyond a tolerable threshold. So again, the meeting facilitator can step in here, maybe upon the permission of the host. And finally, to sort of give a good closure to the meeting facilitator can give a short summary of the meeting while also trying to reflect back to the emotion analytics that it has got during the entire meeting, so that the meeting ends also at a good note. So yeah, this was time access. Then there's another use case where we simply try to combine the tasks of meeting facilitator and the host. So instead of having the host and the host and the virtual agent as a meeting facilitator separate, we combine both of them, and the host will now take the role of meeting facilitator as well, and this agent would be trained using AI. So yeah, so In the previous case, there was a sort of hybrid intelligence where both human or the host and the intelligent agent or the meeting facilitator were involved in the decision-making process. But now we simply combine both their the existence of both of them and make it as a single virtual agent. The third use case is when virtual agent would represent participant. So suppose you can imagine this like this virtual agent here is representing the facial expressions, the aggregated facial expressions of say around 10 real participants in the meeting. So 10 participants are replaced by this one single virtual agent. So suppose a lecture is going on. Let's imagine a scenario where there's like online lecture going, and there's a teacher involved, and there are many participants. There are many students involved. So suppose the virtual agent, which is acting like a participant, it notices that the 10 participants engagement level has gone down, say when matrix operations topic in mathematics was being taught, then it would, so basically its own emotion level of engagement has gone down because it is simulating the facial expressions or the emotions of 10 participants. Then what it would do is maybe it'll interrupt and say that, hey host or hey teacher, can you please repeat the technique of matrix multiplication? I got lost in the middle. So in this way, we can help the online teaching sessions by sort of not making them boring. And in case at some point students get bored, that can be conveyed to the teacher instead of the teacher just continue with his teaching and not noticing that the students have lost him somewhere in the middle.
Please try to conclude it in less than a minute if you can.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And finally, this can also be used in a brainstorming session. Yeah, so for this, we would have to add in a couple of more emotional states like agreement or hesitation. And yeah, after that, this can also have an application in a brainstorming session. Sorry. And I would not go into depth here. It's basically what I used to get the emotional states. So action units can be mapped to these can be mapped to the emotional states using facial action coding system. And finally, there are some known AU combinations, which so basically they are known for these emotional states, but for engagement, boredom, confusion, and frustration, these AU combinations are not known yet. So, so for this unknown AU combinations, we used DAISY dataset, and basically it was a machine learning algorithm that we used to train on this dataset. And I guess for future work, we would like to look into some psychological aspects, like using some self-report ratings and meeting expert report ratings. And maybe hosts themselves can provide some ratings based on their thoughts of how the meeting quality was. And we would like to have a survey based on the usability of the tool. And yeah, major goal is also to look into the consents and ethical aspects of the tool, and of course taking into consideration different cultures into account. Thanks a lot for your attention, and Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nidhi. And again, if you have any questions, please just go to our Discord channel and ask them there, and I'm sure Nidhi will answer them there. So we will continue directly to our next presentation from Sebastian Rings. I'm still in the application field of meetings, but now with a different aspect. So please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm presenting the paper Local 3-View Neural 3D Head Synthesis for Virtual Group Meetings. I know it's a mouthful. The paper is presented by me, Sebastian Rings, and it's done in collaboration with Frank Steinecke. Yeah, so what we're doing here is we're looking especially at video conferences. So in video conferences, we've all come to learn them in the last few years because of Corona and other problems currently. But as we can see, we are meeting here with people from all around the world. We're saving emission, we're saving travel time, and much more. But of course, virtual conferences have a few caveats. And the caveats I'm addressing here is, for example, incorrect gaze. We've heard it a few times today already, and missing eye contact, because you don't know right now where I'm looking, because I could be looking at my notes, which I'm actually doing, but I could also be looking at any of your portraits. And there are also issues with dyadic relations, because if I try to explain something and talking about like my left or my right-hand side, the camera could be mirrored. I wouldn't know what is the left side for you. I don't know where the images are. So there are a lot of issues when talking about any context in these virtual conferences. And other issues are like, if you're in a face-to-face meeting, you could talk with your neighbor, you could whisper, you could just look at a colleague, you would immediately establish a sort of visual communication channel. But all of these things are currently, at least in Zoom, missing for us. So what we did is we are using a few state-of-the-art technology and combining them to create 3D virtual agents for group meetings. So we can do this in our case by using a style gun image to create a novel avatar, a novel picture of an agent, of a future agent. And then we're using the one-shot 3-view neural talking head gun from NVIDIA to create pictures of the avatar rotated in different pitch, yaw, and roll degrees. You can see here an example in the top right corner. And we can also use this approach by rotating the yaw to create two images of an avatar, which are exactly rotated, for example, 6 degrees, which would resemble an interpupillary distance of 6.4 centimeters and a distance of 60 centimeters to your screen or the agent. And by rendering these two images, we essentially have rendered an image for each eye and can create a 3D representation of the avatar. So I wanted to show you a quick demo, but I'm going to skip this. But I will instead ask you all to, of course, put on your 3D glasses to look at a 3D agent. And if you have your 3D glasses on right now, you will see that both of these agents are rendered a novel, non-existent people, but they have a really 3D look, and you can actually see where the people are looking, because it's completely different than just looking at the eyes. You really feel the 3D approach. So this is the first of 5 use cases which I'm presenting in this paper. And of course, I think the 3D view, if you have experienced it yourself, you will really see that it makes a difference. So the other use cases by using these agents, and in the following, I will not show the 3D representations because, of course, it would be green and blue. But I'm just showing the 2D representations of these agents. So use case 2 and 3 are depending on the gaze-dependent eye contact and the gaze consistency. So the gaze-dependent eye contact in this case is, for example, if you look on the left image, you see a video conferences out of the perspective of agent number 5, who's not pictured here because, of course, it's out of their perspective. But you can immediately see agent number 4 is looking at you. And going into detail on gaze consistency, if we are looking at the view of agent number 1, who's on the right-hand side, we can see that agent 4 is looking at agent 5, and you can also see agent 5 looking back at agent 4. So we have a consistency, like in a real face-to-face meeting, that people are looking at each other. So you can immediately establish communication channels. And we can do that literally by, for example, using this to create directional audio consistency by establishing additional audio channels depending on the current gaze. So in a group meeting, you could, for example, see these people are looking at each other, and you could immediately, just by evaluating the gaze, create a secondary audio channel. And when they're talking, because of course we know who's the current speaker in Zoom, you usually have like the first person talking, but you could also like see a consensus of gaze. When a lot of people are looking at one person and they are talking, they're probably the current presenter. So by creating an additional audio channel, we could immediately begin talking, but the software would know we're just talking with the other person. By that, we will not disrupt the course of the conference, but still we would have the same audio input from both sides. It would be like the similarity of talking to your neighbor. And the final use case, number 5, is focused primarily on one-directional meetings. So if you imagine you have a lecture, 1,000 students are listening to your talk, it would be pretty difficult to get a feel of the overall mood or the overall setting. Are they interested? Are they looking away? Are they happy? Are they disagreeing? Are they even having their camera on, which is like a totally different issue? But we can use virtual agents to aggregate the representations of these viewers. So instead of just looking at 100 students who might be looking at the camera or not, we could evaluate the mood of all these people if they have the camera on. And then, like, for example, here I've done this for the Lord of the Rings cast. You can just collect like all, like 50% of the participants are happy. Okay, then we'll just show 10 agents instead. But they all, like 50% of these agents are also happy. So we have like a consistency between the mood, but you wouldn't have to focus on all the students. You just have to focus on the agents, which would also then again be a benefit to, depending on your university's ethical concerns, if the students are even like have to have their webcam on for the professor to see, or it's just like in general. In this example, we, for example, used the FurPlus network from Microsoft just to get like a quick emotional representation. Yeah, and this comes to my conclusion, so maybe I can show you the brief demo afterwards. We have 3D agents and avatars, which we can quickly generate. So we can use this for a lot of different study simulations. For example, what's a very interesting aspect would be like a study of social intimidation. If you have, if you want a conference and you want a lot of people viewing you for a study, it's difficult to recruit 20 people, but instead just create 20 agents who have like predefined motions or attention spans to a presentation to just give the presenter or another participant who's real the feeling that a lot of people are watching currently, and you always have reproducible results. And you can evaluate meetings in more depth. You could, for example, replace certain people with agents. And you could, of course, in the future, which we haven't done yet, which we really want to do, is to have more dominant agents. So like give these agents a role in the meeting, essentially like picking up the agenda, context information, or even just looking at people who are talking with, which makes the people who are watching the Zoom call right now like more easy to follow the conference. So if I had like a few, like 3 more agents who are just like looking at me, it would just pull your gaze also into the direction. Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I'm just going to briefly, if I have time, show this demo. I always like try to bring a demo at least to have like something to show. So I'm just stopping screen share and I'm just pulling up my agent right here. And I mean, I think she loved the talk, but so this is just a very rough prototype, but she's not real and she's not blinking. Obviously, we heard that that's not very good, so that's like probably a next step which we have to do. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Super interesting. I think first insight that I had was that maybe my idea of virtual agents who are always rigged 3D models are not completely correct. So you can also use machine learning models to create these kind of virtual agents that you showed us, and they look super realistic, or at least from the first look. So thanks, and again, please use our Discord and ask any questions that you have to Sebastian, and then we will go further back to Fariba. So same presenter, different topic. Please, Fariba, go ahead.
Okay, I hope that you can hear me, Susanne. Okay, I don't see you, so let me just also...
Yes, sorry.
So, okay, now I have also the presenter. Okay. Okay, hello again and welcome to my second talk about our preliminary work on social facilitation and inhibition in augmented reality. In my first talk, we saw that performing tasks in the presence of more anthropomorphic agents resulted in better cognitive performance. But this phenomenon was first scientifically observed with real humans in 1898 by Norman Triplett, who analyzed bike race statistics and discovered that professional cyclists performed better when racing with a pacemaker than when racing alone. So later scientists observed both increase and decrease of performance in the presence of others, and of course at this stage mostly with real humans, and therefore developed some theories which in general state that in the presence of others, a social facilitation occurs when an increase of performance can be observed in well-learned or easy tasks. And a social inhibition occurs when a decrease of performance in novel and hard tasks is observed. These phenomena have been also observed in the presence of virtual agents. For example, Zambaka and colleagues explored social facilitation and inhibition effects in virtual reality by conducting an experiment in which participants had to solve hard and easy math problems alone in the presence of a real human or a projected agent on the wall or an agent in virtual reality. They observed social inhibition effects when participants performed hard tasks and were in the presence of others, virtual or real. However, they were not able to detect social facilitation effects. Also, Miller and colleagues conducted 3 experiments to examine social interactions with embodied virtual agents in augmented reality. In one of their experiments, participants had to solve anagrams either alone or in the presence of a virtual agent. The results showed that social facilitation and inhibition effects occur as participants performed better in easy anagrams and worse in hard anagrams in the presence of a virtual agent. So, however, these effects in the presence of virtual agents were observed solely for the performance of cognitive tasks. Therefore, we aimed to provide a preliminary study on social facilitation and inhibition effects for both cognitive and motor tasks in the presence of this virtual agent, which was modeled after our experimenter. We did our experiment in augmented reality, and to display the AR content, we used a color headset and a smartphone which slid into the front part of the headset. As the cognitive task, we employed an auditory digit span forward test in which participants heard a series of random digits which had to memorize and repeat them in the same presented order. The easy task had 5 digits and the hard task had 9. We also chose a balancing exercise as the motor task. Here, for the easy motor task, participants had to stand with both feet on a balance board, and in the hard task, they had to stand with 1 foot on the board. In both conditions, they wore a pair of multi-point pressure insoles to measure deviations from the center of pressure as a metric for the performance in motor task. Again, due to the COVID, we only were able to recruit 5 female students between the age of 21 and 23 who performed these tasks either alone or in the presence of a real human or a virtual agent. Our preliminary results show that performing the hard cognitive task resulted in more errors compared to the easy task as expected. And in addition, participants made more errors in the presence of a real and a virtual agent in both easy and hard tasks. We also analyzed the answer durations in the easy cognitive task and observed that a pattern tending towards social facilitation in the presence of a real person as well as a virtual agent were to be observed and was actually accurate. In the easy motor task, participants showed slightly better performance, meaning less deviations from the center of pressure when a real human was present. Then comes the performance in front of a virtual agent, and in the end, the performance alone. In the hard task, participants were able to balance best when no one was present, and it deviated more from the center of pressure in the presence of a real and a virtual agent. So to conclude, we observed a tendency towards social inhibition for both easy and hard cognitive tasks. Analyzing the answer durations showed a pattern, again, tending towards social facilitation in the presence of a real and a virtual agent. In our motor task, tendencies towards social facilitation in the easy task and social inhibition in the hard task could be observed. But again, due to the COVID pandemic, our study included only a small number of participants who had little variations in demographics. And therefore, this necessitates a careful interpretation of the presented exploratory results, and follow-up studies should involve adequate participants to enable hypothesis testing. Thank you for your attention, and again, I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Fariba. I think we have time for a short question, if there is one. Otherwise, if you have long questions, you can also post them, please, in Discord. If not, then I would suggest that we start with our final presentation of Celeste Mason. So she will talk a little bit about her project on social agents in a training scenario. Okay. We cannot hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had it on two screens, so now it'll be right. Let's see. This will be here, and I'll just try to reshare again because I had to stop sharing. Okay, let's see. So here, yes. I'll share. Oh, it's still doing it over here. Okay, I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna move it on the side. Sorry. I thought I could do a little screen share there, but I'll just do it right here then. And please let me know if you can see it. My screen on this side was too small, so that's why I tried to get it to share over on that side, but clearly not going to work. Okay, so yeah. All right, and so here we go. Is it good? Is it kind of visible there now? Okay. Yeah, I thought I should do this beforehand, and then we didn't end up having time. So, all right. Hi, everyone. I'm Celeste Mason, and I'm also from the Uni Hamburg HCI lab. And today I'd like to present the topic personalization of intelligent virtual agents for motion training in a social setting. And so I'll just get straight through since I lost some time. So as part of the KICIG's motion training project, my research focuses on intelligent assistant systems for physical training. So ultimately, it should be an AR or VR exercise game to encourage proper exercise practices. And we'd want to also build up these habits over time. So it involves multimodal interactions with intelligent virtual agents, as well as different types of system feedback. And here we have a pretty early prototype with connect motion sensing. So here just the user follows along with a virtual agent trainer and some companion also agents, and another agent would then give like verbal feedback, and you'd also be able to see the actual movement of the person up in the upper right. But looking into further aspects of this that might improve a person's engagement, one key to this is really agent realism, and that's something that I know everybody's been talking about, but in this case we also want to look at these types of imperfections in IVAs that might also improve the believability of the system and really the user experience. So we can provide realistic visual appearances, as has been mentioned, and vary these in ways that might be more useful for the setting and for the user themselves. So maybe body type or ages, and there might be some ways that we might also simulate biological responses when training, so like sweating or panting or even flushing. We might change the way that the agent uses nonverbal behavior, so also like expressions, maybe grimacing in pain to show empathy if someone has some sort of injury, or competency. So maybe an inability for one of the agents to stretch in a certain way so that they can kind of follow along and maybe even allow the user to learn different ways of doing an exercise based on any issues they might have. So they might also change their pose, as I think someone mentioned before, and that might relate to kind of a sense of mirroring that would change or maybe affect the user's mood. And other maybe typical behaviors or interactions might be, like you see here, cheering or just trying to encourage or motivate up the users. So in a social training setting, the trainer, of course, provides the feedback on what the proper motion is and what the proper form is, but companions in such a situation, they could also maybe, if they're near the user's level of competency, not only provide like complementary feedback, but also maybe assist in the learning exercises. And of course, people have a wide variety of motivations for training. So maybe the companions and the trainers with different personalities could support the training routine through these like either competitive or cooperative actions. And of course, as a person follows a training routine over time, then their preferences might change, or they might even change throughout the day based on their mood. So those are some other aspects of the project that might be interesting to incorporate. So thinking about affect and rapport in these human intelligent virtual agent interactions, you might find that users might want to be able to personalize their training routine directly, but they might also prefer to do it in a sort of a narrative experience, especially in a game. So they would want to do it more naturally, maybe through discussions with the trainers or the agents. And so what we might like to see is like a physical therapist type agent introduce themselves and to speak with the user and ask them about their previous training background or their daily routine to try to find any kind of constraints that they might have, and then just ask about their general preferences. So if they like certain types of games, of course. But over time, the trainer and the user might sort of build a rapport by reviewing the training exercises like on a daily basis or whatever, and then that would allow the user to kind of reflect on their good performances and really reinforce that, and then also get these tips for improving where needed. So, so looking a little bit at social facilitation, not in depth, but you can think of these group trainings that might provide this sort of sense of community and camaraderie, and that encourages the user further. But looking at the agent interactions too, a companion could do the exercise incorrectly in a similar way to what the user might do, and then the trainer could go ahead and just try to correct that in a way that allows sort of like that shared attention that might also really help engagement. And then we can think of this as it's a good means of displaying the correct or alternate behaviors and allowing a person to try to overcome some issues that they might have by being able to do other exercises that are similar, but of a slightly different maybe severity. It also allows the user sort of avoid having the trainer agent directly criticize the user, which might also improve the sense of positive affect for the trainer and maybe the system overall. That's the hope anyway. And then so when we consider methods to approach personalization, of course, there is direct input through interactions with the system by the user. So UI, elements, voice commands, but there might also be automatic system adaptation based on the user's interactions. So change the routine or the profile variations based on the user's goals and preferences in a way that might be found rather than through direct changes, but through just interaction. So you could use this to prioritize feedback, the types and responses to whatever the user's performance might be, and also the level of detail for correction and commenting when training, which is something that might also be of big help. So this is just a brief summary of some of the ways that we hope to facilitate good exercise routines and habit formation through these agent interactions. And yeah, hopefully I'm on time. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Celeste. Very nice talk, as for all of the authors. So yeah, thank you for all of your contributions. Also a sorry from my side. So it's the first time I'm involved in the organization of a workshop, and I feel like I put a lot of stress on the authors and on the presenters today. So it's a take-home message for me. Nevertheless, discussion can go on in Discord, and we will still have a short break of 5 minutes so everyone can breathe, especially the authors, and get something to drink, and then we will meet for our super exciting panel.
Thanks, Susanne, and all the speakers. It was a really good session, I think.
Thank you, Rob.
And don't sweat too much. It's okay. You did great.
Thanks. That's super nice of you. I think I'm sweating because some of our panelists are still not in our room, so they cannot enter the Zoom room. So I hope we can fix this. So
if anybody else is awake, or you can unmute your camera just to say hello.
Hi, Rob.
Hello.
Hello. It's great to see everybody.
Good to see you. Yep.
Hello. Such a big group. I guess we could ask who's sacrificing the most, who's got the latest time zone.
I think
it's
we
10
are
o'clock in the evening here, so it's
10 p.m. now, and the conference is just starting. So happy about the time zone.
We have the big advantage that we don't have to really calculate the time. It's just exactly the same time, just on the other side of the day.
Right. Well, I hate to say it, but if we were in person, you'd be treated to just a gorgeous day outside here in Christchurch. It's just beautiful, like Bluebird Day, sunshine. We're really sorry that we couldn't have everybody be here.
I was wondering, some of the conferences redo the locations, so the locations that could not have been done because of COVID, they redo it a couple of years later.
That's asking a lot of the general chairs, I would say. Yeah, so there's a saying among the general chairs is you're a fool if you never do it, and you're a fool if you do it twice. Wouldn't you say, Vicky?
Oh, but I'm so sad that we're not in New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah. I should point my camera outside. Anyway, it's no big deal.
And in addition, it's summer now over there.
Yeah, that's right. I'm showing my colors though from the last time we were in person. So.
Here, here.
It's nice to see so many familiar faces and so many new ones as well. Hi, Greg. Oh, Mary. Hi. Anthony. Benny. Gert. Wow, so many people.
Hello, Rob. I don't know how to get my picture back.
We see you.
This is because it's the most decent time. In about an hour, I will be falling asleep.
Fair enough.
I just took a little walk outside, and unfortunately, it's time to start pulling the dead heads off of the daffodils. So, which is a very sad point in the spring.
Well, at least you can see the ground.
The other way around?
Yeah. It's coming into the morning, and it's time to start hacking away the autumn overgrowth.
So we should call this brew and brew, where some people have coffee that they're drinking as a brew, and other people have beer that they're drinking, which is also a brew.
Yes.
That a lot.
I'm at the caffeinated end of the day.
So the shameless plug for the HIT Lab is if anybody wants to come do a session, come stay with us. It's very easy to get a visiting academic desk at the lab. It's very easy for us to do. As long as there's no funding involved, it's really easy for us to host you.
I can confirm this as well as a master's student of the HIT Lab.
Thanks, Alex.
I can vouch for the quality of the desks. You can see mountains, unless they built that fire station.
They built the fire station, but you can still see the mountains. You could still see the mountains. There's snow caps.
Still worth going.
Yeah. And Benny, you were mainly in the North Island, right? In Waikato, is that right?
Yeah, I've been there, yes, and just had a very short stopover at your very nice place there. Yeah, so I will plan to do this in 1 or 2 years, I guess, when things settle down. So I will let you know. Don't worry, I will be there.
And Frank, I don't see Frank, but we had a nice stay with Frank for a good couple months. I heard his son is getting really big, so I probably won't recognize him now.
Yeah, Frank was very surprised that Saturday in New Zealand is not Saturday in Germany. I think he would be very happy to have me here today.
Well, the best thing that happened for us is that there are no sessions happening at the time of day when daylight time comes in the States. It's in the middle of the night, and nothing's happening in New Zealand either. So yay.
Yay.
Which means I have today, which is Friday here, and tomorrow are one set of times, and then the rest of it's on another set of times.
Oh, I see.
But I'm done Tuesday night. So
I hope everybody does that. Is Europe switching too?
no.
No, okay.
No. I think we're the only ones
Americans,
crazy enough to do it this
you
early.
Americans are you're always different, right? You always got to do the inches. Who uses inches? Come on.
Do we really switch, Mary, or is this an elaborate practical joke of yours?
I have my time converter.
That's good.
It is nice that you put the clock, the live clock, on the webpage.
I hope everybody takes part in the Verbella game this year. We got lots of good social stuff planned.
At what time?
You do it that's all the time.
I think we're all still in that, how do we get all the pieces of technology to move, and where are the different places you go? I mean, it was a madhouse there just before the first session. On Discord, it was a madhouse anyway.
Yeah, it was.
And I will say something that never worked for me last year actually worked today. So the upgrades on something or other helped.
Okay, so we are still missing 2 of our panelists, so they tried to log into Zoom, but it's not working. So I would suggest while we try to get them in here, we could already start with our 2 other panelists. So I will again show who we invited, and we were super happy that all of the 4 experts were accepting our invitation. So Jeremy Bellinson, Kingsu Kim, Catherine Ertel, and Anthony Steed. And yeah, I think since we already lost a little bit of time, I would just ask Anthony and Kangsu, maybe you could already start with your small introduction, showing us on what kind of research you're working, and then maybe Catherine and Jeremy will join us soon. So maybe, yeah, sorry.
Anthony, you can go ahead. I mean,
okay, thank you. Can you give me permission to share?
If I find you in this list, I will do.
Thanks.
Okay, now it should work.
Okay, all right. Thank you for inviting me. You can see those? Yeah, great. So I thought what I would do is talk a little bit about what we can learn from social VR. And one of the takeaway messages from this is that as we've got more and more experience of using them, I've become less enamored of the idea that agents should be trying to model what we do in the real world, because the virtual worlds we're building aren't real places. They're much more flexible, and they're much more interesting, and therefore what we might have to do to create virtual agents might be informed by what's going on in these spaces and how we're using them. So we of course have done a lot of work with agents and avatars over the years, and just this is a sort of, I picked 8 historical pictures of avatars that we've used. The key thing being that they're all very highly interactive. And so in each of these cases, it's not, none of these is an agent interacting with another person. It's an agent or an avatar interacting with the person, some objects, the environment, and a history of things that go on in the space. So especially with when you've got people in there, you've got story, you've got the joint memory of what's going on. We're talking not just about what's there, but what's happened in the past. And this is very important for building future systems. So I thought in this very brief introduction of 5 minutes, I'd pull out just 3 things that I think are real challenges for the field. One is understanding shared affordances. One is learning and adapting to the system constraints and what the system is. And then a sort of broader reflection on both of those, which is that we're still trying to understand the medium that we're generating when we're creating mixed reality. And therefore intelligence, when it's manifest inside these mixed realities, might not look like people and interactions, because we won't necessarily look like people. Our intelligence won't be manifest just through an avatar. It'll be through our interactions with the space and the space's own evolution. So, and apologies if you can hear some rather excited Fortnite going on in the background. It is, of course, home time here. My son's bedroom is right behind this wall, and there's a Fortnite tournament going on by the sounds of it. So the first thing is that shared affordances is conversations between agents are with places, or with people, or in places. And I just want to point out that we've got a lot of experience of that in social virtual reality, and it's a very, very rich environment. So this is something that we're trying to work on at the moment, which is creating learning from these situations that have people in, to create agents that are cognizant of their surroundings and the objects around them. So this is from a recent experiment with 2 people solving puzzle tasks with jigsaw puzzles on the table. And these types of gesture you see in the real world, which do carry over into the virtual world, are completely rich with meaning, which is very hard to understand. So it's not just about the gestures of the users, it's very specific about exactly where the objects are in the space. So this gestures over here, you can't understand what the woman on the right is doing unless you understand her line of sight very precisely, and she's looking exactly at the 2 letters in between the hands of the other person, and she's trying to pretend that she isn't by shielding her hand. So there's lots of complexity here, which does transfer into the virtual world. So we saw in an experiment which Yi Pan and I ran a few years ago, I saw the same thing, that people using bodies to shield information in the space. So you can't understand that situation unless you know what's going on around you. The second is that the second way you see intelligence is that users and the systems will have to learn about the constraints that are imposed by the mechanics of the virtual system that we're building. This might be the sort of artificial intelligence that sort of reasons about the space, or it might just be the rules of the sort of virtual environment. And I've got 2 examples here. They're both from the same study. And the first is a sort of longitudinal adaptation. So the gesture on the left does not mean I'm thinking. It means it means the same thing as a certain middle finger gesture. So it's not readable in this. If we read this picture as is, and if as humans, we get the wrong impression, because you can't understand this without knowing the historical context of the fact that the middle finger gesture is not allowed in the social VR system of the time. And it's probably not allowed, it won't be allowed in certain, it's the same as automatic censoring. We'll expect that systems that track fingers will not allow you to make certain gestures with their hands because they'll be labeled as rude. So this one, the people adapted very quickly to this, right? They found out they couldn't make the middle finger gesture. They adopted this tapping on the side. And if you know your VR system history, this is because on the Gear VR, the only interface you had was tapping on the side of your head, or one of the interfaces you had, and it would actually show you doing this because it had a little touchpad on the side. The one on the right is there's two avatars that one person used within the constrained avatar system. And at some point that they lived with the avatar on the left for a while, but then it's sort of, for weeks and weeks. This is a study we presented at VRST about 4 years ago, where people use these systems for several months. And then it got to a head where the person interacting with the person wearing this avatar just said it looked far too much like Che Guevara, and it was putting them off. And it didn't manifest for weeks. And then because of the constraints of the system, this is as close as he could get to what he looked like in the system. And then it sort of, fell apart. So this was this evolution of the avatar, of course, is just a constraint. And we can expect there'll be different constraints and people are adapting to them in different ways, which the agents will need to understand and also adapt to through their behavior and over their lives. And then finally, this is a little bit of a vague point, but it's a sort of trying to pull out something I've been thinking about recently, that we need to understand the medium to make things useful in it and make them intelligent agents that are assistant to us and as you have a role in these spaces. There is quite a lot of focus on making agents like actors so they can act out scenes, and the scenes are very realistic. That's a perfectly good objective. What I want from my agents is something that's a bit more like Alexa, that I can instruct to do things. And it's not a virtual world and it's not a home environment. It's a very mixed medium where I've got lots of different things I can do. And I don't think we understand quite what we want our agents to do yet. And what the rules that transfer are, because one of the things we've learned about the real world is it's very pliable. We make social capital out of many different things, as Daniel was talking at the beginning, from clothing, makeup, even where we live, where we go. And I think we don't know. We can start to speculate, looking at things like, which are very user created, like Neos and VR chat, that actually there's a lot of things we do need our agents to understand, and because the world is changing very fast. Right. And the virtual world is under our control, so we can make the rules how we wish. Finally, so the second key thing is I think we need more social. We need more study of this to understand what we're trying to do, live with the systems, start to bring in more agents and have them interact with us to look at the social VR. And I would just do a plug that we've made, and we'll be talking later at the conference a few times about a completely open source platform called Ubit, where we've been trying to enable a lot of this sort of early work on sort of creating social situations, recording them and learning from them. So there's quite a few examples, mixed student projects and so on, and all of this is open source and ready for the community to adopt without any issues. It's open source under the Apache license, which is one of those do whatever you like with it licenses. It would be nice if you cited the paper. Thanks.
Thanks, Anthony. So maybe we can proceed with Kanzu. There he is. So he's an assistant professor at the University of Calgary in Canada, and hopefully will also show us what he's working on right now.
Okay, so can you hear me okay, and can you see my screen as well?
Yes.
Okay, good. So first of all, I'm very excited and honored to be here as one of the panelists. So I'm not sure if I can actually say I'm an expert in this area. Seeing Greg and Anthony, Mary, and all, like Rob, Vicky, all, my admire. So I admire all of this research they conducted before. So I'm new, so I just started my position in University of Calgary. And then I worked with Greg and Garrett and Nahara, so I can see Nahara over here at UCF for a while, for the past like almost 10 years. So today I actually didn't really prepare my own like a research project description kind of stuff. So, but the point that I wanted to make in this slides, basically, I'm trying to provide some different angles so that you can actually think of like from the perspective of the users, the end users. People use these socially intelligent agent or whatever the virtual humans these days. So many of the slides that I have in this slide package is actually from Dr. Han-Eun Park. Han-Eun Park is a professor at Pugyong National University in South Korea. So I'd like to thank him. And okay. Yeah, can you see everything okay? So, I mean, I'd like to touch some of my own experience, I mean, related to these metaverse or the virtual human, those kind of stuff. I don't have to explain what the metaverse or augmented mixed reality means here with this audience, but the terminology was coined in 1992 by Neil Stephenson, as you know. And then there are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight over here because it's basically my own experience. I mean, in 1998, when I was a kid, there was a first virtual, like a SIVA singer in South Korea. It was really popular at the time. And then after that, 1999, I mean, it was actually ahead prior to Facebook era. I mean, there was a SciWorld that we call SciWorld, and then we can actually decorate this virtual space, and then we can actually put our avatar, like a 2D virtual avatar, in my room, and then my social, like my friends can visit this space. And then there was actually a virtual currency at the time as well. We call Acon. It's similar to the Bitcoin kind of stuff. So we can actually purchase something for my friends to like and give the music for this space so that they can actually decorate. And then after that, I mean, this kind of like an immersive or like 3D virtual space, Linden Labs like showed his second life. And then after that, like to 2010, around the 27 or 8, we experienced this. We saw the iPhone, smartphone-based platform. So we are now socially connected all the time with other people. And then 2020 with this wonderful, weird situation with this COVID-19, the importance of this remote communication or the social connection in different places are getting more and more important. And then there are some numbers. I mean, basically, I mean, metaverse market is growing. The business is growing. AR, VR market. A lot of people anticipated this big market with this AR, VR technology and metaverse. And then what's the meaning of these embodied or virtual humans in this space, like a metaverse space? That's what I wanted to say from the perspective of the end users. I mean, so 3D digital human, basically human-like appearance and behavior with this embodied virtual character. I mean, it could be avatars controlled by the users or the agent controlled by the automatic system. But I mean, we're using this Apple memoji or any kind of like the virtual face in our daily lives these days. And also in Korea, I mean, I'm from South Korea, so I have a lot of information from South Korea. There was actually a platform we called Geppetto. It's like the creator of the Pinocchio. So there is a platform Geppetto, like Horizon, Facebook, and actually a lot of people use these Geppetto these days. And then you can actually see many celebrities, virtual avatars in that space, and then you can create your own virtual avatars, agents. And then these days, making these kind of virtual human is much easier than before. I mean, there are powerful tools to create easily these photorealistic virtual humans. And then what I wanted to point today is like how people use and interact and get influenced by this virtual influencer as like a virtual avatar or virtual human in general. I mean, there's a web page like a virtual human org. You can actually check this page, and then you will see a whole lot of like different virtual influencers on that page, and then how people use that virtual human. There are a couple of examples, like Lil Miquela is one of the popular like virtual influencer. I guess a lot of you guys already are well aware of these virtual influencers. Interestingly, I mean, these virtual influencers are not just in the virtual space. I mean, the activity they actually perform is just like a real human. They actually have the agency. I mean, for example, this Lil Miquela's agency is a CAA. I forgot the full name, Creative Artist Agency or something, which has like a Brad Pitt or like a Lady Gaga actually have a contract with this company. So, I mean, all these virtual influencers are out there, and people actually use and interact, I mean, indirectly interact with these virtual influencers. One of the popular area is this fashion and entertainment, of course. And then the metaverse, actually, metaverse marketing is very popular these days. I mean, using this Geppetto, the Gucci virtual collection was actually happened in Geppetto, and Valencia, the company actually had this fall and winter collection show in this platform. And then, of course, there are some other applications that people like young generations can actually make their own like a virtual clothes. So when you click some photo of this kind of like clothes, then this service DragSex actually make these kind of like an image. So the virtual clothes can actually fit on my body. And a lot of people actually use these kind of service to share, I mean, the photos, I mean, the interesting photos with their friends through Instagram or whatever the social network platform. And then also you might know this, like several virtual concerts happened in this VR space. For example, like Travis Scott or DJ Marshmello actually performed their show in this VR space. And also like recently, I mean, the ABBA actually planning to have this virtual show in this year. So it's really interesting era how people actually use these virtual avatars or agents in their daily lives. And this, of course, they're like a big acquisition of this. Microsoft actually acquired the Activision, the game company, with a lot of these virtual characters. And then if you want, I mean, you can actually search this virtual concert list, and then you can go these different types of the virtual concert in the VR space. So it's very popular, and a lot of people are getting more and more familiar with this use of the virtual agent or avatars. But still a lot of like interaction, I mean, indirect interaction happens in the purely virtual space. So recently, of course, our research and like industry companies actually make these kind of like the AR, augmented reality or mixed reality applications, so that you can actually bring the virtual agent or avatars in the physical space in the real world. For example, like you're familiar with this Spatial, one of the company who collaborate with Microsoft at the time. And also in Korea, there's a company named Maxt. So they actually have this 360 virtual space and also augmented reality, so that multiple, I mean, the heterogeneous like a VR AR platform they can actually communicate with other people in remote places or local places using augmented reality avatars or virtual avatars. So what I'm saying is in this era, I mean, the augmented reality or mixed reality, whatever we call the spatial computing will be, I mean, closely connected to this social computing aspect, and also using this mobile device or so wearable devices. So we're going to use these interact with the virtual humans anytime, anywhere. But at the same time, what I wanted to focus and then address is the physical influence of these virtual avatars. So my previous work with Greg and Garrett and Nahana as well, we've been focusing on this, how these virtual entities, virtual avatars can interact with this physical environment so that they can increase the sense of a social presence or the social influence of these virtual agents towards the users. So something like this, you can move this physical table part, and then the other part, the virtual space actually moved. And then with this virtual human, if the virtual human push the table on the other side, the virtual side, the physical side actually moved. So that actually improved the user's sense of social presence or co-presence with these virtual humans. And also we use this different IoT devices so that the virtual human can interact with this physical environment. And then some other airflow interaction we developed, and the airflow can actually make these virtual things in the virtual humans space fluttering. And then we also used like a different form of the virtual agents, not only the virtual humans, but dogs or different like cats, kind of animals. And then the miniature virtual humans can be a good assistant for you to make a better decision. So this is a kind of like one of the examples that we have, the Desert to Survival task. Basically, the user needs to prioritize 15 items for your survival in the desert, but the agent can actually provide the information or suggestions so that the users can actually make a better decision in augmented reality. So basically, I mean, what I'm trying to say is from the end user's perspective, the social influencer is very popular these days. The celebrities have their own virtual avatars and agents, so people can actually interact with the virtual characters. And actually, important part is actually influence of those virtual agents, how that actually impact the user's decision or thoughts or behavior. So a while ago, I mean, 20 years ago, I mean, from Norman Bedler from the University of Pennsylvania make these kind of bold statement in some sense. Ours may be the last generation that sees and readily knows the difference between the real and virtual things. But I don't think this means actually we're not gonna recognize which one is virtual, which one is real at this point. But what I'm trying to say is, again, is in terms of the influence of these virtual agents, I think the social influence that embodied agent can make towards the users for us will be pretty much the same level or even higher in some cases compared to the real humans influence in the future. So in that sense, I would like to kind of ask some questions in this panel discussion, how we're gonna do our own research in this kind of a social agent context. Yeah, that's pretty much all, and thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. We also have some good news. So Catherine and Jeremy are here as well. So Catherine, maybe if you also would like to share your screen and give us a short introduction to your work. So Catherine Oertel, she's a assistant professor at TU Delft, which is in the Netherlands. And I think her perspective is also very unique, very interesting, because she's not only working on social agents, but also on social robots. And I think we can also learn a lot from that. So.
Okay, I'm going to try. Can you hear me? Does that work?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, let me see. Okay, and you can see my screen now? That works too?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks so much for the introduction, and my apologies for well, not reaching so quickly the session. Yes, so I work on well, socially aware conversational AI in general, and specifically on group interactions where well, I try to use either humans or robot to create a hybrid intelligence. I think it's better said in a video than yeah, through words what I'm trying to do. So I'm gonna see whether it works. It's just 3 minutes. Let's see. Can you wait? Do you hear the audio? Wait, let's try.
I think.
What we're particularly interested in is looking at creativity.
The lab is a joint effort between 2 departments. So the whole AI initiative is a form of bridge between people like me who study how people design and people like Katha who work on building social robots and how they can engage with humans.
We're working together with people from design and people from computer science. And I believe that only if we're starting to establish a common language and looking beyond, we realize that actually a lot of the work has already been done and we can profit from the knowledge which has been generated and work so much better together. So I think that's quite unique.
By combining these 2 abilities in a complementary manner, what would design look like if you used these social robots as part of the material? Design methods are constantly evolving based on the materials that are available to us. So if social robots and in general, these kind of machine learning toolkits become a part of the material with which you design, then what new design methods can be formed?
What brought us together and what really excites us is that we are both interested in how conversations evolve and how can we have an AI support a team, support a group, and the interactions they are having. That's in essence what it is about. And there's different aspects which come into play there. How someone is saying something, not only what someone is saying, where you're looking, what you're touching, where you're gesturing. Can we sense it using audio, video, all these kinds of information extracted automatically? So can we pick up on this and can we make sense what happens? And how can we have an AI help you unblock and give you insights? So there's different ways AI can help. And it comes in different forms. And artificial intelligence can so quickly browse the whole web, can kind of put connections together from people from other teams, from ideas you had 3 days ago, but you don't remember them anymore, can kind of link back to what has been there and what can be new in a way which might surprise you. So how can we evaluate that? Is this useful? What way actually can we support you as a human? We don't want to replace a human, right? That's not at all the idea, but we want to support humans in their processes.
We are in a stage where AI and machine learning, all of these things are all pervasive. Any field you choose, they are finding these applications.
But there is so much fear of being replaced by this artificial intelligence. So how can we take that away? And I think like to show that robots are there to supplement you, to give you more space to be what is intrinsically human, right? So to foster your creativity, to give you space to think, to deep think, to have an emotional intelligence and just support that. I think that's still what's crucial, how it's done also in a sustainable and responsible way, whereas there's also trust being established.
If our motivation is to produce this kind of ethical research, and I think this is a great framework in which to do it.
It is a unique time because we are just having this huge societal phenomenon happening right now. And I think really we can contribute to it. I think like looking at team dynamics, looking at conversation is something which will become essential, especially in these hybrid places. So I think combined with sensory information, like all this deep learning having evolved so much that we can do other kind of computing than we could do just a couple of years ago. This just puts it into a so unique, promising position.
Yeah, so this was a little bit of a promotional material because this is like part of a big elect we got funded from the Dutch AI bigger funding scene, but I think it gives a little bit of an introduction as well, I hope.
It did. Thanks, Catherine. Then we can come to our last panelist, Jeremy Ballinson. So he's the founding director of the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford University. And I hope he can share his screen as well. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
See the slides. Thank you for having me. Incredible to look at the people on this call, and what an amazing group of panelists and listeners. Thanks for being here. So in my 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you about basically what we've been doing with our lives for the last 2 years in my lab. So we ran a very large networked avatar study across 6 months. We had 263 students spending a couple hours a week together inside VR. And March 2020, I had to make the decision about my teaching for 2021. And I requested to teach in the summertime of 2021 because I wanted to have a full 15 months to prepare for the study that was embedded in this amazing class. We had to solve some problems. Hardware. We had to get 180 headsets that were all 18-degree freedom, that all ran well. Big challenge getting that hardware, getting it loaded up. Platform. We ended up using the Engage platform. I'll talk more about that. We had to flip the classroom, which is harder than it sounds. Maybe some of you have done that work. Of course, people on this call know you have to have a bunch of content, and we had to think about privacy. So really incredible team I had working with me of PhD students, postdocs, and staff. These folks were true heroes in the study, worked incredible amount of hours and just utter brilliance. So here's our stack of 180 Oculus Quests that we had to load up and ship out to everyone. We also had students using the Pico Neo 2, Valve Index, HTC Vive. We chose the Engage platform. I don't know how many of you guys have used the Engage platform, but it was the one that gave us the most control over content creation, over the student experience. Most importantly, using Engage, we could track all of the pitch, yaw, roll, X, Y, and Z of head and hands at 50 Hertz. We could track the audio. We could record all the actions. And so we have hundreds and hundreds of hours of group interaction in VR where we can literally recreate and re-render them, and other platforms wouldn't allow us to do that. I'm flipping the classroom. So the thing about VR is there's got to be something to do. And the way we settled is Sunday, we would have people do all the readings. Every week was a different topic. Week 1 about avatars, week 2 about education, a week about climate change, a week about education. So Sunday they do the readings. Monday we'd be on Zoom, take a deep dive Q&A on all this content so that they know the content. Wednesday we take a VR journey. What does that mean? 160 avatars, we descend upon AltSpace VR, and we'd go to a meditation class together with the Reverend Jeremy Nickel, or we would go into the Engage platform and begin in a blank plane, and we'd build a city together an hour and a half. That was always engaging and active. And then on Thursday and Friday, we'd have small group discussions, 7 people standing around a room where nonverbal behaviors are rendered appropriately spatially, and we would track everything. There's a screenshot from us with the Reverend Jeremy on our journey for meditation. Things to think about is time. So a few people on this call, I saw Anthony on this call, Anthony Steed. There's a handful of people that have done the hard work of looking at how VR behavior evolves over time, but not enough of it. And what our preliminary data analysis shows, we just finished running this study, the effects of time are epic and massive, so larger than the effects of our independent variables. When you look at someone at their 25th time in VR, very different than their first and their second. Location context. So we did a stimulus sampling technique where we varied the type of room they were in. It could be indoor, outdoor, it could be large and small, and we tested systematically 184 different contexts to see how that affects collaboration. Large groups, a lot of people have done dyads, a handful of us have done triads, but when you're looking at groups of 10 and you're computing measures, for example, of synchrony, the correlation among body movements, computing synchrony for 10 people, very different than 2. And I think all of us getting more reps thinking about large groups is important. Of course, one of the most important questions a lot of people on this call have looked at is, what does your avatar look like? We systematically varied if it was yourself or a generic avatar, and looking at downstream effects. And then, thinking about what does one do in VR. So we made we made a decision to keep talking to a minimum in VR. I think Zoom works well for that. A lot of nonverbal stuff, a lot of content creation. And I will close by going back to this image, because I think when we talk about agents, one of the most exciting things that's emerged from this class as we're plowing through the data is the ability, I'm calling it social time travel. And I know others have made this term before. Daron Friedman, for example, has written a paper on this. The ability to record avatars and then instantly render back that scene and walk among them is something we've been able to do before, but it's been very difficult coding wise. The Engage platform, and I have no formal affiliation with Engage, they've got this simple button press where it's a MyRec file, they call it, and you can literally have a group conversation, hit record, hit play, scale down that group conversation so it's a diorama, and then walk around it and to kind of be around yourselves and witness history and go among them. And then you record that and iteratively gone down. And so one of the things that's most fascinating to me right now is we're literally putting on the goggles and walking through our classes and walking through history. And so that's what's got me super excited right now. I will not go over time, and thank you again for including me in this amazing panel.
Thank you, Jeremy, and a really amazing project that you did. So we still have a little bit of time for some questions, and I'm sure that there will be some questions in the audience. So please feel free to ask. We also found the second Discord channel now, so I think we can see every question that is posted. Or you can just raise your hand and ask here. Otherwise, maybe one first question from my side. So we also talked a little bit about embodiment before, and my question would be, what do you think, how much embodiment do we need for virtual agents to be capable of showing some social behavior? Because we saw in Fariba's work that usually we have these assistants which are only voice-based and maybe they have some display. So is this enough, or would you imagine that in the future every agent is embodied? So what do you think?
I can say something quick about that. Everybody's heard now about embodiment, the embodied cognition. There's a concept in sociology called embodied social cognition, which is well worth study, which is that resource and bodies are resources, space and bodies are resources for conversations. So when I showed that picture of the people sort of trying to communicate about the jigsaw puzzles, that's because their bodies are just as informative. And that's not just that I signal to you, that is that we create a space between us. So it's not just understandable as an individual, it's understandable as a joint space, because the shape of the space we carve off with our bodies is important. And yeah, so getting that right is one of the reasons that I'm so interested in feet at the moment.
Yeah, if I can add on to that, one of the things that's emerging from looking at the tracking data of these large groups over time is thinking about shapes of people. right? So with dyads, there's no shape, right? There's always just a line. And with triads, you can think about different size triangles, but this kind of macro embodiment of shape has been something that we've been playing a lot with quantitatively.
Thanks, Jeremy. So we have a question from Victoria in our Discord channel. So a question to Anthony. I really like your advice to lean into the unreal capabilities of VR. What are some of the behaviors you've noticed people exhibiting in social VR that don't mirror typical behavior in real life? What capabilities do you think people might most want in social VR that current technologies don't yet support?
That's a really interesting question, because all I observe at the moment is things that are different. The social resource of having magic interfaces that only I can see is actually, we recently did a review of different social VR platforms as a sort of cognitive walkthrough, just to point out that they're all doing completely different things when it comes to interfaces. There's a bit of magic going on, and I've seen people turn away to open their interface, even though they can't see it, just because they don't want to use their interface in front of somebody else, even though they can't see it, right? They just think it's rude. And so it's capabilities like that. The thing that I think is socially interesting is the ability to create in front of other people is magic. So that sort of ability to bring things in. The thing we like most about spatial is the ability to just drop stuff in and make it appear, and it has a social function. So that type of thing that you bring in a cat or a picture of your dog and it's immediately there is really interesting, and it's not something you can do easily in the real world. At least nobody's expecting you to, because you don't do that in the real world. You have to get your phone out or pull a book off the shelf. So that's quite an interesting affordance that I think will be interesting that people are using. But I would look to sort of communities that have been using these avatars a lot, like the VR chat or NEOS communities. They're really living with these things for months. I imagine there's quite a lot to learn from those communities.
Thanks, Anthony. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, Sandro, please go ahead.
Hi, I sort of joined late because I had a presentation in another workshop, and I was wondering, are there approaches to me having my own personal AI that really belongs to me instead of having a platform, maybe a third party that provides me this AI? Sort of also security concerns, etc.
You are apparently not the only one who's wondering this. So
yeah, I think it's an interesting take, and there is a big interest on people to run everything on the device and not sending things to the network, or maximum on the edge, which currently means in the device anyway. But I think that that's something that people are going to be asking more and more, right? That the data is not being transferred to particular, not only people. I mean, the European Union, for example, doesn't want data to be stored in US data centers. And we will see more of that given how the world is going, right? But I think, yeah, this is right. Probably the best way to solve it would be have the maximum you can on the device, and as they become more powerful, you will need less of the compute to go to a server side. And it's cheaper for the companies also because they don't need to power servers. You are putting the compute, right?
Yeah, thank you for
thank you.
opinion on this. So I think we have another question by Victoria. For any of the panelists, to what extent do you worry about the potential for serious setbacks to the nascent body positivity movement, as the ability to present oneself as an idealized virtual avatar becomes more widespread? Interesting question, I have to say. So Jeremy, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, so much to say on this. Thanks for the question. And a lot of people who I'm seeing right now have done work that shows that your avatar affects who you are in VR and outside of VR. And we all, I think most of the people on this call would agree that, you know, the time one spends in VR does bleed to one's perceptions and behaviors in the real world. So how do you think about idealized avatars? I mean, how many of us, I've got my touch-up filter all the way cranked on this Zoom call right now. So I'm doing it right now. And when I use a platform that doesn't have the ability to crank up the touch-up, I say, whoa, who is that guy, right? So I don't know anyone that's looked at the long-term consequences, but I completely agree we need to.
Any other opinions on that? Otherwise, maybe I would like to pose a follow-up question regarding ethical issues. So I think every workshop, every panel about virtual agents also has to discuss a little bit about the ethical perspective. So what do you think if we reach a point where actually people cannot notice anymore if they are talking to a real human or to a virtual agent? So do we have to notify them that they are now working with the virtual agent, that the emotions the agent is showing are only artificially generated but not real? Or what is would your approach be?
I think that's a lot harder than people think it is. I'd be more worried about masquerading as somebody else. That's a much more tractable, I think. Agents, faking being people is solving the hard AI problem, and of course, this is it's not as hard as you might think if it's a completely novel interaction. But if you're trying to substitute somebody you know well, I think that's going to be much tougher than I think people are. But masquerading as somebody you don't know, Jeremy's got his filters turned up. How do I really know it's Jeremy? I mean, that already could be a fake video. It's not, because he's talking intelligently about things Jeremy knows about. But I mean, there's plenty of people that will fake that video now, and they do it for celebrities. So I think that'll happen, and the masquerading is going to be hard, but a hard problem in the next couple of years. Oh yeah, okay.
So thanks, Anthony. Also, thanks to all of the panelists. I'm afraid that we already have to end this panel and the workshop. I know that some of you need to go to the next workshop. I would at least very briefly like to thank our reviewers as well, our program committee, because we had very tough deadlines this year, but they still supported us very much. So thank you for that. And thanks to everyone who contributed here. I hope you get some take-home messages. I get some. So next year, I think we will apply for a full-day workshop and maybe not a first time slot of the conference, but also, of course, some very interesting insights regarding virtual agents. So thank you a lot. Of course, you're invited to stay. We will keep the room open, but if you have to go, enjoy the rest of the conference, and hopefully see you again next year for second round of SIVA.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Susanne.
Thank you.
So thanks, Jeremy, that you made it finally. I know it was a little bit stressful. I cannot hear.
Whoever was in charge of real-time tech support, thank them, because Sebastian, is that you there? Thanks for taking care of that. Appreciate it. It worked. We can build the most amazing immersive VR and embodied AIs in the world, but we can't get a Zoom call to work, huh?
Yes. Same problem every time. But yeah, I'm happy that you made it. And I would have loved to talk more with you about this topic. I think there are a lot of interesting aspects, but maybe we can do it in another time, a different place, maybe in a real place. Would be nice. Yeah,
I agree. I look forward to that, and congrats on a great event.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
So thanks, Susanne. I will also say bye and a great evening. Yeah.
Yes, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Susanne. I will be sending you an email very soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
And also thanks, Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian.
I forgot you. But
Yeah, thank you for the nice papers. Hey.
Well done, guys.
Thanks, Lucy.
did you actually read that Mark or Rob wrote in this in Discord that he is wondering if Frank's group has some ideas on that?
I saw that, yeah, but it was too much information. So one other take-home message for next year: I need more screens. It's impossible to have Zoom, Discord, problems via email, Slack, everything on the same screen.
You did a great job. But
yeah, thanks. I really would have liked if it wouldn't be so stressed for everyone. So
it was not stressed. So I mean, it's just like doing it once and then it's over.
Yeah.
Do you actually attend other workshops?
I think not workshops, but some of the paper sessions. I think there's also one about agents, and Nahal is presenting there. I will try this one, but it's also starting at 11 p.m. So
11 p.m.
on Monday, I think. Yeah. I mean, this is the problem. I think we can only be there if it starts at 8 a.m. in New Zealand. Then everything that is after 12 is impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. Then also was a day for me. I say goodbye again. Have a nice weekend.
Have a good night.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, I guess I will also go now.
Yes.
Same.
Have a rest. Thank you, Lucy, for being here, and thank you so much, Sebastian, for your support. It wouldn't have been possible without it, I guess. So thanks.
Yeah, and great that you carried out the panel discussion completely.
Okay. See you on Monday.
All right. See you.
Bye.
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 So I will close the session. I hope that's fine. If anyone still has an open issue, please just go to Discord and let us know.